So today we're going to be going into Hysata, the hydrogen electrolyser with claims of 95% efficiency, and we're going to be exploring whether or not these are the next steps for renewable energy. So in terms of the technology, what is hydrolysis? So basically, it's the forced decomposition of water molecules into two parts with the use of electricity. So we get hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions. And what's the point of this? Well, hydrogen itself can be used as a direct replacement for gasoline in combustion engines and even has more energy per kilogram of fuel. Gasoline has 13 kilowatt hours per kilogram versus hydrogen's 33 kilowatt hours per kilogram. Hydrogen also produces water vapor as opposed to carbon based emissions, which could add benefit, but we're going to go into that a little bit later. Hydrogen can be fed into hydrogen fuel cells, which convert hydrogen gas directly into electricity. And it is important to note that there are inefficiencies that are lacking due to lack of technological advance in this product. What can hydroxide be used for? The other component of the process. It has various applications, all the way from neutralization of chemical reactions to chemical and pharmaceutical manufacturing. But that isn't really the focus of this presentation. Who is Hysata, their product, and their claim? So Hysata is based in Port Kembla, Australia, and it was started um, as an offshoot company to commercialize an idea that was founded in a lab in the University of Wollongong. Yeah, and the claim that I'm going to be exploring today is we're delighted to support the game-changing homegrown innovation that will, I think it says, change our future as a clean energy manufacturer and renewable energy superpower. And I'm going to be kind of exploring whether or not this energy really is clean and if it's worth pursuing. So let's first go into Hysata's electrolyzer. Um, and it really is an exciting innovation. So the electrolyzer, sorry, um, the classic one here on the left side of the screen is the one developed in the 1800s and used until about the 1960s. And it basically involved a, um, a separator divided by an anode and a cathode that are provided a current. And this current breaks down water into hydrogen and oxygen. And these are then released from this chamber. And the problem with this design is the fact that it has a lot of resistance, internal resistance, and as a result, it has a pretty low efficiency. And then next, we have the zero gap electrolysis cell. And that's a technology that was developed in the 70s but continues to be produced today. And it again has a decreased resistance. And the only major difference between that and the previous model is the fact that there's less of a gap between the separator, the cathode, and the anode, which in turn decreases the resistance. The next one is the PEM electrolysis cell, which further reduces resistance by using a proton exchange membrane instead of a physical separator. And what that does is it allows the hydrogen atoms to be produced without having been in physical contact with the cathode. And as a result, hydrogen is produced more efficiently with less resistance. The final stage, and the one that Hysata is using, is the capillary fed electrolysis cell, which reduces the resistance even further by having the water reservoir not in contact with the cathode and anode. Instead, they use a capillary separator, which um, acts as kind of a vein system that allows the water to be soaked up into that and then to be processed by the cathode and anode, which more cleanly produces hydrogen and oxygen with increased efficiency. And so this is Hysata's specific design. It's basically two pucks, cathode and anode, that are sandwiching that unique sponge membrane, um, which is connected to a tank below the cathode and anode holding the electrolyte solution. And by the way, electrolytes are used to further reduce um, the resistance of the system um, by increasing the conductivity of the water solution. And so they use these cells and stack them in a cylindrical form, and they are able to produce this claimed 95%, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So first, we're going to go into EROEI to kind of explore these claims. EROEI is energy return on energy invested. So it's basically comparing the amount of energy it takes to produce a fuel compared to the energy the fuel itself has. And it's important to note that there are always losses, and it always takes more energy to produce a fuel than the fuel itself provides. So the formula for EROEI is energy produced divided by energy invested. So first we're going to look at what it takes to produce 1 kilogram of gasoline. So from crude oil to the pump, it takes approximately 15.42 kilowatt hours per kilogram. And this is being generous with the amount of energy that it takes. In terms of gasoline, it has 12.33 kilowatt hours per kilogram of energy. So the calculated EROEI is 0.8 kilowatt hours per kilogram. To produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen with Hysata's technology, on the other hand, from electrolyzer to pure H2 form, it takes approximately 41.05 kilowatt hours per kilogram of produced hydrogen, so quite a bit more than gasoline. But hydrogen also produces 33.3 kilowatt hours per kilogram of raw fuel. So the calculated EROEI is 0.81. And it's also important to highlight that in a perfect world, which we do not live in, a perfect EROEI would be exactly 1, but there's always going to be losses in producing these fuels. So the result, Hysata's electrolyzer will produce a better energy return on investment, but just barely. Okay, now we're going to be going into the second part of the claim. Is hydrogen actually clean? So let's do a hypothetical. If we were to replace all coal and oil refineries, cars, etc. with hydrogen fuel, what would the results be? Replacing these carbon-based emissions would not reduce the amount of greenhouse gases produced, because water vapor would be produced in the burning of hydrogen. And it's important to know that water vapor is currently the most abundant greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, making up more than 50% of greenhouse gases. So let's do some calculations to kind of approximate the percentage of water vapor that hydrogen replacement in fuel would add to the atmosphere. So the volume of Earth's atmosphere is approximately 4.2 times 10 to the 18th cubic meters, which is very, very large. The average percentage of water vapor in the atmosphere is around 3%. The reason I say average is because water vapor percentages in the atmosphere vary depending on location, altitude, temperature, and more. So it ranges from 0.4% to 4%. So I was kind of generous with that percentage and gave it 3%. Now we have to know the volume of water produced if combustion engines went full hydrogen, and that's around 21.4 billion cubic meters. So the calculation of the new percentage of water vapor in the atmosphere after 1 year of hydrogen conversion is calculated by the current volume of water vapor plus the added water vapor as a result of hydrogen fuel replacement divided by the total volume of Earth's atmosphere. And so by doing that, we get a new percentage from 3% to 3.000000051% at year 1. That's pretty low. After 500 years of this, the new percentage still wouldn't break 3%. It would go to 3.0000255%. So what can we conclude? Yes, hydrogen is pretty clean. So now let's go back to the claim. We're delighted to support game-changing homegrown innovation that will power our future as a clean energy manufacturer and a renewable energy superpower. Is it clean? Mostly. Although greenhouse gases would technically be produced, They wouldn't be carbon based, and that might be better. And they add a marginal percentage to the total amount of water vapor in the atmosphere already. This isn't to say that it would have no effect at all. It's possible that in 1,000 years this practice would become potentially harmful. Does hydrogen have superpower potential? Absolutely yes, I think. This is still a new technology and has room for improvement despite the claimed 95% efficiency. Improvements in engineering will make this cheaper and more accessible. You can even make your own little machine yourself at home with stuff you probably already have at home, and that's how accessible this technology really is. Um, and with high scale production and improved technology, you can only see it become cheaper in years to come. Now we're going to go to the 95% dilemma, despite the fact that it's not part of the original claim that we were looking at. Because this technology isn't public for consumers yet, the 95% figure is just a figure. Um, Seeing is believing. But the CCO of Hysata publicly claims to already be producing hydrogen with this efficiency, and they're waiting on the scaling up factor of this business in order to globalize. But the truth is, we won't know until they go public. So take the 95% with a grain of salt. And that concludes it. Thank you.